I'm surprised you're still seeing my videos at this hour. I thought I was fading into obscurity. No left foot, right foot guessing game today. As usual, if you see this, just say, hi, or leave your phone's battery percentage on the right. Let me know I'm not completely irrelevant yet. Alright, enough chit-chat. Let's get straight to today's main topic. The man you see stripping bark is Hubert Blaine Wolfschlegelstein Hausenbergerdorf, or Shuaikun for short. 2.5 years ago, he built a nearly finished log cabin in the forests of Ionia. That video garnered 9 million views. Today, as he returns to this place, the forest remains peaceful and beautiful, and his log cabin quietly awaits him. The log cabin at this point has its walls completed and is ready for the roof to be built. After setting down his toolbox, Shuaikun begins to chop at the top of the walls with his shadow axe. Because the logs have rounded surfaces, they can't be placed stably, so all sides need to be flattened. Finally, he uses a string to measure for a consistent level to meet his expectations. He works like this until sunset. The next morning, Shuaikun brings some planks to build a temporary scaffold. This makes it easier for him to work at height. Then he brings some logs, using the ancient method of rolling logs, to gradually move them in front of the cabin. This method saves him a lot of physical effort. As the saying goes, to do a good job, one must first sharpen one's tools. Shuaikun meticulously sharpens his iron axe with a whetstone until it gleams with a dazzling cold light. To fit snugly with the top of the walls, these logs also need to be flattened. The entire process is done completely by hand, primarily testing one's patience. These logs, aged over time, have developed cracks on their surface. However, this doesn't affect their use. The roof frame is quite large, and a single log cannot bear the heavy load. So, Shuaikun carves a tenon at one end, and then inserts the headed end. This extends the length of the timber. This ancient mortise and tenon joint requires first shaping a suitable tenon. After comparing the dimensions and making marks, a suitable mortise is carved according to the tenon. This allows the tenon and mortise to combine perfectly, creating a seamless joint. Since these logs were collected 2 years ago, their surfaces have oxidized. For a consistent overall color, Shuaikun needs to give them a fresh skin by stripping the outer layer. After finishing the log preparation, Shuaikun begins manually transporting the timber. Once they're moved to the top, the rest of the work becomes much easier. Now, he needs to prepare today's dinner. He has to eat first. With Shuaikun's exquisite cooking skills, he could easily find a job as a chef. After eating and drinking his fill, Shuaikun begins to process the roof's pillars, which will support the entire roof frame. After working day and night, Shuaikun finally finishes making the pillars. Now, he can smoothly align and embed them into the timbers, thus supporting the main beams of the log cabin. The lower ones on both sides are the rafters. From the overall structure, it's clear. It's still a traditional triangular roof. After working for so long, Shuaikun's stomach is rumbling with hunger, so he starts preparing ingredients. There are not only vegetables, but also Spanish ham. Then he presses out a flatbread, spreads some tomato sauce on it, and puts all the ingredients on top. This is a wilderness pizza. He covers it with a lid, trapping the heat. Now all he needs to do is wait patiently. When he lifts the lid, the pizza will be cooked to perfection. After finishing the entire pizza, Shuaikun starts assembling the roof. Thanks to his meticulousness at every step, the assembly process is incredibly smooth. Even someone with OCD would have to give it a thumbs up before leaving. When it comes to the gable ends, to ensure a seamless connection, Shuaikun carves corresponding grooves based on the irregular shapes. This allows the timbers to fit together perfectly. Ultimately, he creates a framework that is a work of art. His extreme attention to detail explains why everything you see has taken him 2.5 years. Just as the log cabin was about to be topped off, some unforeseen circumstances arose, forcing him to stop his work. Here's what happened. Shuaikun had originally bought a forest plot here, planning to build a wilderness cabin. However, some neighbors moved in nearby, and they also planned to build houses there. They created a lot of noise every day, and other equipment interference, disrupting Shuaikun's originally peaceful filming environment. The daily noise created by the neighbors became unbearable for Shuaikun. Since they had also bought their land, Shuaikun was helpless. After several unsuccessful attempts to communicate, Shuaikun made a difficult decision to find a new construction site. After 2 months of searching, he drove from his local area to another small town, checking maps and navigation. Finally, he found an excellent location. Then, using the savings he accumulated from the internet, he bought a new plot of land. This was a dense oak forest, and it was even more remote and quiet. This was Shuaikun's dream secret base. After reaching an agreement with the forest owner, Shuaikun's mind was filled with mixed emotions. Looking at the cabin he had painstakingly built over 2 years, he now had to dismantle it with his own hands. The pain he felt was immense. However, this was the only way. Fortunately, the cabin was built with mortise and tenon joints, so when dismantling it, no structural damage would occur. I've seen many cabins being built, but this is the first time I've seen one being dismantled. Because thick moss was filled between each log, the pressure from the cabin roof caused the moss to stick to the logs. Shuaikun had to clean all this moss off, and he marked each log so he could replicate the cabin 1-1 later. The size and position of each log are different. If there's even a slight error in marking, the entire cabin sequence would be messed up. Furthermore, the dismantled logs needed to be placed on shelves away from the ground to prevent them from getting damp and moldy. Finally, he removed the floor. It took Shuaikun 2 whole months to restore the cabin back to individual logs. The cabin, which was almost complete, had now completely vanished. Logs. Due to the remote location of the new base, large trucks couldn't enter, so he used a small trailer to transport the logs in batches. The first thing he did was clear the weeds to create a clean area. There were almost 100 logs for the cabin, and he could only transport 2 or 3 at a time. Adding the round-trip time, he could only transport 2 or 3 at a time. Adding the round-trip travel time, plus the time spent moving the logs, it took about another half a month. Having learned from being disturbed before, Shuaikun used an electric drill to bore some round holes in the ground. Then he embedded metal posts, preparing to completely fence off his territory. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about strangers or animals trespassing. And for the stability of the posts, he really went all out this time. He poured mixed concrete and then wrapped layers of wire mesh around them. Finally, he separated his territory from the outside world, ensuring his privacy completely. When lunchtime arrived, Shuaikun quickly fried some sausages. Then, he started digging foundation pits in the ground. To ensure the stability of the cabin's foundation, he specifically bought cement to fill the excavated pits. He used a rebar framework for internal support and then encased it with hollow bricks on the outside. Finally, he filled the inner areas with cement. This kind of foundation is guaranteed to stand firm. After the base had dried, Shuaikun brought the bottom layer of logs. He arranged them in their original order. Then, he built up the logs according to the markings. By late night, he turned on the laser level. There was absolutely no error in the levelness. The next morning, Shuaikun, who had only slept for 4 hours, immediately resumed his construction work. Building it up now was much easier. Each log had a groove, so he just had to stack them like building blocks. And with his previous experience, this time he bought a large quantity of wool to seal the walls. This stuff was hundreds of times better than moss, though a bit more expensive. They say, if the foundation is not strong, the earth will shake. He decided to lay the floor first, then he could build the walls upwards. Each log was also secured with wooden dowels. This ensured the overall stability. It was the same familiar formula, the same familiar process. To speed up the construction, he worked from early morning until late at night every day. When he felt tired, he would explore new scenery nearby, allowing his body a brief rest. Days passed like this. Because it was a reassembly, the speed was much faster than the initial construction, saving a lot of time. As the walls reached their full height, the outline of Shuaikun's cabin became clearer. When it came to the roof section, transporting the logs became particularly difficult. However, with the help of a winch, he easily got the main roof beams into place. Another 5 months passed. His cabin was restored to its original appearance. To celebrate this moment, Shuaikun immediately heated oil in a pan and fried 2 steaks to reward himself. After all, he was doing strenuous physical labor, and without sufficient nutritional intake, his body definitely wouldn't be able to keep up. Due to working over 10 hours a day, Shuaikun's body was starting to feel the strain, so he decided to return to his original small cabin to rest for a while and recharge for the upcoming construction work.